Hello, Sunrise Church. Those of you who are joining us here on this Wednesday evening for our third and final chapter in these conversations on racism. If you're joining us for the first time this evening, 2 weeks ago, Pastors Israel and Clifford and myself talked, and then last week we had Pastor Francis, and we had Ifoma and Chikozi Muoto with us for the conversation. If you missed those, I invite you to scroll down in the Facebook feed and find them. They're worthwhile, just conversations about race and about racism. And so tonight we just want to continue that conversation. I just want to take a few minutes to set the stage here. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm one of the pastors here as well. I'm Shane. I serve as the administrative pastor here, part of the teaching team. And I just want to let you know that we're just having conversations about just racism backgrounds from people here at Sunrise. We're not experts. We don't pretend to be experts. We're just regular people having a regular conversation about a difficult but important topic, especially one that's going on in the culture around us right now. And just to be clear, we're not here to take a stand. We're not here to rally for a cause, to impose legislation or anything like that. We just want to start a conversation here. And then we want to invite you into the conversation. So if you have questions, we have Pastor Keith here ready to take those questions and give them to us. So we invite you into the conversation, as well as we would love for you to continue the conversation where you are and with the people around you, because it's an important question or important conversation. You know, as I sit here in this auditorium, one that maybe you still remember. It's been a long time, hasn't it? But on the walls, you probably recall 3 phrases that come from a book in the Bible called Micah. And I hope that that's what you hear through our conversation tonight. It tells us to do justice, first of all. And that's a cry of our culture right now, is to do justice, to act justly. A lot of times what gets lost in our pursuit of justice, though, are the second 2 phrases. To love mercy, to be compassionate, to be empathetic for other people around us, and to look to their needs before we look to our own. And then the last one is to walk humbly, that I don't have all the answers, and I never will have all the answers. And so I'm always in a learner position. And so I hope that you hear that tonight, that we're in the midst of doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly. So as I mentioned, I'm Shane, a pastor here, and on stage here with me in this living room setup, I have 3 fabulous, brave women. This is Victoria, this is Bernadine, and this is Jessie. Maybe you recognize them from being around Sunrise. Now, they're not used to being up here on stage, they're not used to being here for that, but what I want to do to get into the conversation is just start, because we're going to have a conversation on race and racism with a different perspective, and I would say an often overlooked perspective. And so to get into that subject, what I first want to do is maybe what you've already done. When you look at us up here on stage, you look at me and he's a white guy. Okay, that's pretty clear. But as you look at these ladies, maybe you think the same thing that I think when I look at Victoria. I think, okay, you're black. That's what I think of. You're maybe African American is kind of an assumption that I would make. Bernadine, I look at you and I'd say you're Hispanic, or maybe Latina or something like that. But I'd look at you, and Jessie, maybe I'd be a little confused. I'd probably guess Hispanic, or maybe Hawaiian or Pacific Islander.
Got it all.
Okay. Yeah. So I would, in other words, I would see you. I would make a judgment, and then I would have all these assumptions that would flood into your experience. And so maybe you've done that as well already. But now what I wanted each of them to do is introduce yourselves, as well as how you see yourself, how you describe yourself. So whoever wants to go first.
I want to know, what are you?
What are you?
Oftentimes people do assume that I'm like Pacific Islander or Hawaiian or a lot of people actually ask if I'm Asian.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if it's because my eyes are really squinty when I smile or laugh, but for some reason I get that one a lot. But I am, as an adult, I found that I'm Native. And I was talking to Shane the other day about how, if I was going to label myself, it would be Indigenous Chicana, because I am from here, but my dad's side of the family is from Mexico. They migrated here from there, Mexico City. And then my mom's side of the family is Native. So, Indigenous Chicana.
Help me understand Chicano. Does that make you from
Chicana?
Chicago? I mean, I grew up in Chicago a little bit. Is that the same thing?
So Chicana is just basically Mexican American.
Okay.
So I love Selena Quintanilla, and she is like life. And so growing up, I think everybody loves her. She's like an icon. But I was laughing because it's funny how her dad explains Chicano or Chicana in a way, because he's like, we have to be more Mexican than Mexicans, more American than Americans. It's exhausting. And it's like, yes, that's so true. We have to know everything about the Hispanic culture, but then you also have to fit in over here too. And so it's confusing sometimes to grow up that way and kind of not really have full-blooded one culture, I guess.
Okay.
I agree with that. I identify as Hispanic, and I grew up in Los Angeles, Southern California. However, my parents were from New Mexico, and then they grew up in Colorado, in Pueblo, south of Colorado Springs. And so we are just mixed, it's Spaniard and Native American, and but I went through a phase where I was like, where do I fit? Because I don't really feel like I'm a whole anything. And when we went across the Indian reservation, well, they started talking to me in Navajo because that's what they thought. But I didn't know any of that. So anyway, but yeah, so I relate to that.
Okay.
Like you said, most people, they see me, they see black, which I am. I am half black on my dad's side, but I am also half Hispanic as well. As a kid, I didn't know what to identify as because I grew up a little bit in the upper middle class suburbs of California, as well as the heart of the ghetto in Long Beach. So there's also a lot of polar opposites where sometimes I'm a mixed kid growing up with white kids that are just pure white and they come from money, and then there's the other kids that I grew up with that were just all black or all Hispanic, and they came from not a lot of money. So I was very confused as a kid as to what exactly I was. But now I just identify as a mixed race person. It's black and Hispanic.
Okay. So the idea of, and that's the angle or the entry point of, if you will, into the conversation tonight, is the idea of just what is it like to be mixed race, or intercultural, or however language you want to put to that, and you may wonder, well, what's my part in that? And well, we always grew up and we didn't know if we were Swedish or Norwegian. That's actually a pretty big deal in some parts of the country, So, in other words, I really can't relate to that very much, And so just maybe there's some others that are similar that can't really relate to that because we have more of a monocultural sense of ourselves, no matter what that cultural is. And so maybe share some stories. You kind of touched on it a little bit with yours and a little bit, so each of you, but maybe some stories that help us understand what it was like to grow up kind of in the mixed, in a mixed cultural setting.
I really resonate with Tori because growing up, my dad's mom, my grandma, she didn't speak any English, but our parents all spoke to us in Spanish, in English. So she learned to know what we were saying in English, but she would respond to us in Spanish. But we never were fluent in Spanish. So growing up, it was just kind of like all of my dad's sisters are successful. They all got their college degrees and educations. Lots of them went to OSU. And they're citizens now. And so coming here to benefit themselves was a bigger priority. I don't know. I don't want to speak for them. But we just didn't really get talked to in Spanish. And so growing up in school, it was like, well, where, the Hispanics, I actually got bullied a lot by the Hispanic girls. So much so that my dad's like, do you want to switch schools? I grew up here in Hillsborough. So I went to Hill High, and I was like, no, I'm not going to switch schools. But it would make me cry and feel frustrated because it was hard to have that tension of them, like them not knowing Spanish, so you can't really, they're like, you think you're better than us? No, I just don't know how to speak Spanish. So it felt like caged in a way, just because it was like, ugh, what do you do? Almost paralyzing, because either way, it's like you can't really fit in with them, but if you're over here, they think that you're acting stuck up and bully you for that. And so it's like, okay, no, I just want to be treated for who I am. I don't know Spanish, but I'm still, proud of being Hispanic. It's not that I don't care or that I look down on it. I just grew up in Hillsboro, so it was hard. I didn't like that feeling. I wanted that culture so bad, but I didn't really experience it like someone who grew up in Mexico.
For me, it was where I grew up. We were all Hispanic, or there were some families that where the kids were like first generation. But our family, it was just a little different. Music was always part of our culture. Family always got together, and it was, it was really just family. And even in school, most of the school kids, we went to elementary, junior high, high school, and so I didn't feel different. I really didn't know Spanish because my parents only spoke Spanish when they didn't want us to hear. But my grandma couldn't speak English. My mom's mom, she didn't speak any English. But somehow we communicated with her. I don't know, just through love and cookies. So I didn't experience that separation like that as growing up at school.
I definitely did. There was a lot of you don't fit in type of behaviors from the other kids. So when I would be in Rancho Cucamonga, it's in the suburbs, and there was majority white children, I looked black and my hair was different and my skin color was different and I wore different things and I used different products, so there was not a whole lot to bond with the other girls my age because I was almost too brown to be hanging out with these white kids. And then on the opposite of that, from going from that environment to then moving into Long Beach, where now I'm surrounded by all these black and Mexican children and there are no white kids, well, everything that I've just learned, I have to relearn because they're different now and they behave different and their culture is different. I didn't eat the same food that they were used to eating, and I wasn't used to doing the same activities as those kids are now doing. And it was almost like I was too whitewashed, is what they call it. I behave white now, or I got into the habit of flat ironing my hair. So they're like, oh, now you're trying to be white and you don't fit in with us now because you're too cultured by them, so to speak. So then I had a really hard time finding out who do I play with and who do I get to be with and who's going to understand what I go through as a mixed person, because there wasn't a whole lot of mixing in my schools. There was always a lot of one or the other. And then I had a lot of those moments, like Jesse had said, like a what do I do type of moment. And one that I remember very prominently was being in school in 4th grade. I was at the white school where most of all the kids were pretty much white. There was only a few here and there. And I was doing state testing, and all the kids were very focused. Everyone's quiet. Everyone's just doing what they're supposed to do. And they had asked a question on the test for us to bubble in our ethnicity. But I remember seeing you can only choose one. And I just remember this like echoed in my brain, like, only choose one. And I was like, oh, I'm two though. I know that I'm two things. I'm black and I'm Mexican. So do I put that I'm Hispanic or do I put that I'm African American? And I didn't know what do I do? How do I pick one? And I raised my hand and I asked my teacher for help. So I was only 9, so I was like, I don't know how to solve this. And so she came over to me, and I remember her looking down at me and asking me what was going on. So I explained to her, I don't know what to do here. It says I can only pick one thing, but how am I supposed to pick that one thing? And she asked me, what do people see when they look at you? And although that question may take some people by surprise, that's something my mom and I had previous conversations about. because I had brought home my struggles at school with which kids do I get along with, and she had always said, well, what do people see when they look at you? And they see that you're black, you're a little black girl, that's what you are. And that's what people are gonna see you and judge you based off of. So my mom did a whole lot of work in teaching me how to prove people wrong with my personality, and with just because I'm articulate, or just because I have a different education, or just because I like different things, didn't make me one or the other. And so to try to stop those judgments. But when my teacher had asked me that, I already knew it's what she wanted me to say. She wanted me to say that I was black, and so I did. And so I ended up filling out the bubble next to the African American side, and I felt so torn. It was like a very ugly feeling, like a betrayal to myself, because why did I have to pick only one? And I was very, very confused.
True. Yeah, even now, like my husband is like, oh, we have to fill out the census or whatever, and you have to write your ethnicity, and he'll say, are you white? And I almost feel like really passionate when he'll ask me something like that, because of those scenarios when you're younger, when you're just kind of like, what? That stuck feeling, where you don't know which way to go because you know you're both. I didn't always know that I was Native. And so I learned that a lot of my culture as an adult and not as a kid. And so all I knew was be proud to be in America, because America, our government and our army and all that is strong, and we're just a strong country. And so be proud that you're American and wear it well. And so I was always like, yeah, I'm white, all the time. That's literally.
So the assumption was if you are a proud American, you need to think of yourself as white.
Yeah, then I couldn't be called like Latino or Latina. It was like, because in Mexico, you're proud that from where you're from. So it was hard, because I'm like, but I'm from here, but I look like everybody there. So I even got teased for, your voice sounds like a valley girl. I'm just like, what? And people would be like, what? Just talking back to me and making fun of the way I talked, because I externally look cold, oh, your cheekbones, they're so high, you look Native. But I grew up in such a white culture that it was so confusing. It was it's almost torturous to think about right now. I'm like, I just don't like going back to those thoughts.
It made me think of something. So for those of you that don't know, I'm Victoria's grandma. And so it made me think of something right now. When Victoria was probably in kindergarten, she might have been maybe in kindergarten. And she came home one day and she said, we were talking about ethnicity and what we are. And she proudly got up and said, I'm half black, and I'm half Mexican, and I'm half white. And then we looked at her and was like, well, that's a lot of halves. But most important is, where's the half white? And she said, from Papa, because Papa's white. Because my husband's white. So
Yes.
she just thought she was half white. That was cute. Yeah.
My math has not improved.
And what I'm hearing is a lot of the pressure in the culture is to either or.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet for you guys it needs to be, and you want it to be both and. And why can't it be? Why can't it be even better? Because I have these, because I brought in these things, instead of it being, oh, you're too white, or you grew up over there, you got all those, you need to get rid of those, instead of it being a gift that you're bringing in. And really that's a lot of where we're at right now culture-wise is, again, it's like this pressure to polarize, pressure to be on this side or this side, which I would imagine it's hard enough, I think, for anybody who wants to be in the conversation. I would imagine it's even that much harder for you guys, because even that creates this tension even within yourself around that. So that's kind of culture background, kind of family background growing up. So kind of what, as you kind of heading into adulthood, and as you start to establish your own kind of sense of self, start family, things like that, how has the kind of, again, the intercultural mixed race been a part of your story as an adult?
It's been hard for me because I feel like I got robbed of being Mexican I guess, and being more proud of being white. Growing up, it was like a teeter-totter. So I like fully submerged myself into the Hispanic culture as an adult, and the Native culture, just because I felt like I needed to fulfill something. And so my husband is white, and so we are an interracial marriage, but really he's the only person that I dated that was white. You know, just thinking back, I'm like, wow, when we got together, we do big things. Family is a huge deal. We're always doing things together. Everybody's like a pit bull, you know, the sisters and the cousins, and you have like a huge gathering for everything. And everyone's so tight-knit that to learn marriage and to separate from them was like, you need to just understand that this is how it is, you know? It wasn't, I want to learn over here. It was like, you're going to just integrate into this part of, and how it is in our life. And, whew.
So you're saying to Chad, he had to just integrate into your way.
I tried that. Yeah. It didn't, the Lord did not make that successful. And he really, you know, like, my foundation was completely reset. When you say I'm a child of God, it's so different than trying to figure out where you fit in culturally. So the Lord just kind of navigated me to we kind of talked about this at a brunch one time, how it was so hard to disconnect from my family because of the loyalty that you feel to them. And you just grow up learning that you do not break that loyalty. Family over everything. And so I didn't really like fully submit to Chad all the way when I married him, because I was still submitted to my family. And learning that how to disconnect and really make Chad my family, well, he wasn't culturally inclined, like, you know? So he doesn't dance the cumbias, and he's like, who's Selena? And I'm like, what? What? So that was different.
That can be a challenge. It was for me, because I felt, and I think it's maybe probably growing up, you know, it's ingrained in our head that, like, white people just don't have culture. Mm-hmm. They don't. But I know today they do. But that was it, you know. And of course, my husband's white, and we are a very interracial family. So we have a little mix of everything in our family. So we. But family, it was hard separating from that. That family is everything. But yeah. This is your family now. This is your family. And I try and share that, you know, with my granddaughters too, and my children, that is your family now. If you can be a part of things with our family, that's great. But if you can't, that's okay. You know, it's so dysfunctional. Yeah.
What? You're not going to be there?
Otherwise, yeah. Yes. But I used to think that way. I really did, and that's how I was taught. So, but I am so grateful. I think I shared this with you before, that it's just all about us being human beings, and I think it's when we realize that, you know, we're all children of God. We belong to God's family. It doesn't matter what color we are. You know, it's like, and you know, beginning to really work to reverse all that thinking, all that stuff that we learned growing up, that's not right, you know, and we have to change that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I would say it's affected my life as an adult, because I've had to get out of the mindset of thinking everyone's going to make me choose, and just choosing for myself that I'm just going to be myself, no matter what anything looks like on the outside. I can only perfect the person on the inside. And so that's the person that's going to matter to the world the most, not if they see me as Mexican or if they see me as black or if I'm acting white. It really doesn't matter, because in the end, if on the inside I'm not the person that I want to be, then my color is not going to matter. And then getting married just recently here to a white man has definitely showed me that there's some cultural differences. I mean, throughout our whole relationship, we've had to overcome some things that I thought initially were just wrong. Like, oh, your culture's wrong. You're wrong for thinking that. You're wrong for doing that.
Yes.
And then for me, also, like vice versa, he would think, wow, you're just a lot. Like, there's no boundaries here. 'Cause it came with the family, especially, where family is everything. I tell my grandma everything. She's like my best friend. And then it's like, okay, well, now you're in a serious relationship and now you're in a marriage. So I need to consider the fact that, okay, so maybe in my culture, even though we're very open and honest with our family, like you're going to know all of my business and I'm going to know all of your business and there's going to be no secrets. There's also a respect that I have to have for my husband, who comes from a more reserved culture. His family isn't like my family in the regards that they're as open with each other about every aspect of their life or every aspect of their relationship, and they're not at each other's house every single day of the week. And I feel like if I don't see my grandma at least once a week, I'm like, oh my gosh, grandma, I miss you. What's going on? Are you alive? Or he can go weeks without contacting his family. And at first, for me, that was like, well, there's something wrong with your family dynamic there. Like, something's not okay.
I always tell Chad, that. You're wrong, you know?
You're
And
wrong.
sometimes I can feel like racist towards Chad, towards my own husband, and because he's not the same. And so it's like the whole, you know, sermons that we hear about like, it's, how do you explain it? I just lost it, but it's so good. It's about when you, I don't know, I just lost it. It'll come back to me. But it just resonates with me what you're saying, because it was like, you have to be like me. That's what it is, the sermon. You have to be like me in order for me to love you or to like you,
Accept you.
because you're like me. But what about the people who are different? We're judgmental towards others who are not like us or don't live like us, but it's easy to love someone who's exactly the same.
Definitely. And
That's the sermon.
I mean, I just think of, it's hard enough to be, so I mean, in a monocultural marriage, you know, we're both white, you know, still have all the differences in family backgrounds, of course, but to add in the cultural differences, it's like, it's one thing to add in family differences, but then to have the weight, if you will, of the cultural differences also coming to bear. That's got to add that much more tension. I mean, you made the comment, I'm downright racist against my husband. You know, just that
He
idea.
used to say, she's a pistol. That's how he used to refer to me, because like you said, it's like we're so passionate and prideful, and we're like, no, this is how it is, because that's how we grew up, like she was saying.
No,
it's just
definitely.
a mindset that you get, that you're in this upbringing, and you're like trained to think that way. So that when that's all you know, it's like projecting it on our husbands.
And I think especially because growing up, not only multicultural, but as a woman, you're told the white man is like the biggest enemy, and all of us went and married with him. So
oh, believe
it
me,
was like,
I
this
know.
is
I feel it.
Our biggest defense. So learning that he's not the enemy. He loves me. He actually married me. So there's a reason there somewhere. But treating him not as the enemy, because you're just so used to, well, first of all, I'm not going to let you put me down because my color is different. I'm not going to let you put me down because I'm a woman. And then it just kind of, I find myself on the attack so much more often.
Wow.
And so that's definitely shaped me as an adult in my relationship, learning how to differentiate between my feelings about my culture and my own insecurities about what I think he's going to perceive me as, where I'm finding myself being hypocritical towards him because I'm being just as racist by saying those comments or treating him this way because he's white. And so learning those differences has been a really big part of my life.
Everything going on in the culture right now overall, you'd like right there in your home.
Right there.
In a lot of ways, as hard as it is to be from a mixed race background and in an intercultural marriage, in a sense, you guys lead the way for the rest of us because you're living it on a daily basis. I can go avoid it for days or weeks and or see it from afar, whereas you're seeing it every day. So what the lessons you're learning, really, we need to hear. I'm glad. That's why I was so glad to be able to get this conversation going.
Yeah, sometimes it's not fair to them because for me, like you said, it's like an automatic judgment when something comes out of their mouth. It's just kind of, then I'll become rude and harsh towards him instead of understanding and patient and empathetic to the fact that he probably doesn't understand fully. And it's not his job to know that he offended me. It's my job to be appropriate with my reaction. So
Yeah.
it is a learning curve. It's a learning experience. And with the kids, because I went through what I went through, the turmoil of having to figure it out and be confused, I grew up like a chameleon in a sense. I'm just going to fit in with any environment that I'm in because that's just what I have to do to survive. So for my son, his dad's from Mexico, and then he has my side too. So he's a Chicano. And I teach him to be proud that he is Hispanic, because for me, that wasn't like ingrained for me. It was more like, be proud to be American, more than it was, here's the other half. And I had to discover it on my own, which then I inappropriately went off balance with, like I said earlier. But it's important to me for my son to know where he comes from. Both sides. You are from the Hispanic descent, and you're American too. And then I have Alana, who's white, and Chad's daughter, and my daughter. I call her my daughter now, and so I just wanted to correct myself. I'm doing that every time I say Chad's daughter. I need to remember to label her my own. But we went into a Hispanic tienda the other day, and Carlos is all excited because he's used to those stores. And Alana was trailing behind me, and she was kind of plugging her nose and walking around, plugging her nose, and I was like, oh no. I actually got offended because I was like, gosh, that's so embarrassing. And you know what? If this was ever on the news, that's how I felt internally. I'm just going to be real. Internally, I felt offended because I was like, if this was on the news and something ever happened, it would be about the poor blonde girl with blue eyes. If the Hispanics got, offended and something happened, like an altercation, the news report in the media wouldn't be about that she was, had ignorance. It would be about poor her because she's white and she has blue eyes and blonde hair. And all these Mexicans are attacking her. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. But it's important to me to be super honest with them and talk and have an open context dialogue to let them know we have those discussions like, hey, that really hurt my feelings that you did that. And this is why. And she's more quiet and reserved. I think she internalizes, and I'm assuming she understands. Because she doesn't verbalize anything. But for the kids that are coming up in this generation, it's important.
Excellent. And more time for kids is definitely, but I do want to remind you that we do have the opportunity for questions, and Pastor Keith is here to take questions. In fact, he's signaling to me right now that we have a question. So, Pastor Keith.
So all of you are in an interracial relationship. So what has been the biggest adjustment to each other's cultures? And this is for everyone.
Like Scandinavian, Norwegian, Swedish, No.
And we don't know what Amy's is, so.
She's Cajun.
She's beautiful Cajun.
That's funny.
So yeah, what was maybe an example of what's something that's been a really hard, maybe an adjustment or a place where there was friction because of cultural differences?
Between the two?
Yeah, between husband and wife. So, you mentioned one about, you're used to always being together as a family, and you're just going to come and be a part of our wild and crazy family, and him not saying that, well, I don't really want to. Or,
especially because Hispanics drink a lot. And so Chad's recovering addict. It's important that we protect that first. And so it was hard for for him to be like, well, we got to create our own traditions now as a family. And I'm like, what? No. At first, when we were new, I was like, we're going to every single one. We're going to every single event. That's not an option. And his family's smaller. He has like one aunt that I've met, his mom, his dad, and one brother. And I'm like, what? You guys don't do anything together. Nobody talks. Like, so I just feel like I've had a hard time with his dad because when I met him, he made racial comments towards me at the first dinner that we sat down at. Just stereotypes. Oh, you must like cleaning. Or to Carlos, oh, you must like soccer. Because we're brown, or because I'm a woman, and that it was hard. So we've had to work really hard to break that barrier, and it's still not fully reconciled. But we got to get there, and we make just the understanding that it is so different. It's hard.
Okay.
My husband, he's 14 years older than me, so we also had like that generation gap. So my in-laws, they're way older than I am, and they were very kind. They have the way that they do things when we get together for family reunions and holidays and stuff, and they're out of state. Most all of them are out of state. I just did it, we just, it's just the way we are. I just took over, and we're just going to do it the Mexican way, okay? We're going to have tamales, we're going to have beans, and we're going to have rice, and we're going to do, and that's kind of how that's how we do it, It's just his family's not here, so we just, just pick all that up, and the new family just starts, and it's all my culture. So unfair, huh? But that's what I did.
It's crazy that you're saying that, because as you're talking, I see that in my own relationship, and being so close to you and to Papa, and knowing the dynamics firsthand, I see that a lot. One of the biggest differences with me and my husband was that we met online, and he moved here from Indiana to be with me, and so he made a giant sacrifice by leaving his family. No matter how close I think my opinion of their relationship would be, that was still his family, and that's all he ever knew. And he grew up in the same city his whole life, and he chose to move 2,000 miles to be with a girl. And so I have to definitely give him a lot of appreciation for that big sacrifice that he made. And not only did he do that, but in the similar situation here, he decided to come into my family, and everything was my way, the way that I was used to, which is typically the Hispanic way. And one of the biggest things that we've had to overcome was for me to learn how to respect his boundaries, because he is naturally more quiet and reserved person, and he's an introvert that gets drained from social gatherings. And so the expectation that I had set for him in the beginning, we're going to go to everything, you're going to participate in everything, you're going to talk to everyone, you didn't say hi to her, go over there. That was a lot, and he soon just didn't want to go at all. And so that wasn't fun for him. He didn't get the same things that I got from going to those gatherings. And so learning how to compromise with that, like, okay, you're going to go to this one, this birthday party, that's great, but you're going to skip out on this one, that's okay. And me being okay with that, just taking the time with my family without him is okay. I didn't have to have him with me everywhere like we were used to. You bring your partner, you bring your spouse, you bring your kid, you bring your friend, you bring everyone. We're all just going to celebrate whatever it is together and make a big event out of it. So learning to respect his boundaries and not force him to fully migrate into my culture and respect his reserved one was a big thing for us as well.
Yeah. So thank you for asking the question.
Yeah,
Please
that's a
ask
good one.
more questions. Again, we'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. And so love it. In the meantime, we're going to continue our conversation and love for you to continue on as well. And so you kind of broached into the idea of kids, and for you it was an adoption situation as well. So you have a son that comes from your background, you have a daughter that comes from Chad's background, and then so you got kind of crossings going
Yeah,
all,
I mean,
all over the
Alana,
place.
most people know our story because we've been involved here for a long time. And this has really, everyone's kind of just rallied around us this last year. Her mom died, her bio mom died last year. And so she kind of full-time, we had to go through the adjustment of having her full-time, and she's not going anywhere, you know? And so being with Carlos for the last 11 years, they're both 11, they're a day apart. Wild. Yeah, Carlos is February 18th, she's February 19th. So when she integrated into his school that he's already established in, because he's been with us full time all these years, no one believed that they were related, that they were siblings, because she's white and he's not. They don't look the same. So they've even had encounters where we would have to go see the principal and have a sit down with him, because the lunch lady wouldn't let Carlos go and check on Alana at lunch, because she didn't believe him that that was his sister, because she was white. And so it's definitely been a lot of adjustments. But again, like I said earlier, it's so important to me to talk and have that open dialogue between all of us about the reality of what's going on and why it's important to be educated around it all.
Yeah, we are a blended family also. So my husband, he had a son from a previous marriage, and I had two. And so when we took our family portrait, you know, it was like, you know, white, and then you had these dark children, and then but then we had two together, and those two look white. So they always thought I was the nanny, you know, with the two white babies. They just assumed that. And then, of course, my daughter, you know, we had to have a conversation because she wanted to date black men, you know, and I just said, you know, I don't care who you marry, as long as they love you, I don't care. But if you choose to have children, you have to, whatever nationality you step outside of from our family, you have to inform your children, have them be and know both cultures, know both cultures, and that was important to me because, of course, you know, once she had the girls, you know, everything's different. Like Victoria said, you know, we couldn't use the same hair products we use in our hair. Like Roxanne messed up their hair a lot. Trying to figure out, you know, what kind of products to use in their hair, what kind of lotions, and all those kind of things, you know, that we didn't know. We just didn't know. And so, yeah, it was a learning experience, but I love it when we're all together. My grandson, he's dating a Native American girl in Spokane, and so I'm just like, all right, people, how many do we have left that still need a husband or a wife? Because we need Asian or Polynesian or something now. You know, our family's just so multicultural, and it's beautiful, I think, you know, so.
And you got a family starting here
I do.
Soon.
Very soon, yeah. Like, I know not everyone knows, but I am 35 weeks pregnant right now. So very soon we'll have a half white and a quarter black and a quarter Hispanic baby girl. And she's going to be very mixed. So I think our biggest parenting kind of hack is going to be just to teach her to be a person. Just how to be a person and how to grow up in society, being respected and respecting others, and not focus so much on the race, because I feel like so often, even like how my grandma had to try to coach my mom with, you're having a mixed kid, so this is what you're going to do. I don't want to have to coach her. I want her to just be a person and not have to worry about what color she came out, or she may get blue eyes, she may have brown eyes, she may have really curly hair, she may stick to her dad's side and get straight hair. I have no idea what she's going to look like. Which brings a lot of questions of anxiety, but I'm trying not to focus on all the what ifs of what's going to happen to my baby, or what she's going to be exposed to, or what she's going to have to go through. I just really want to hone in on parenting her just to be a good person, rather than having to parent her on how to not be a jerk because of people's colors or because of her color. Don't want her to be defensive like I had to be defensive. I don't want her to be on the offensive either because she will have the half white on her. I want her to be able to accept all parts of what makes her who she is. And then most importantly, just know that no matter what, at the end of the day, she's God's child too, and so is everybody else. So are we really that different?
If only we'd stay there, start there and stay there.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing that I've learned this year with the quarantine is just to like talk Jesus to my kids. Like I can be in the church all day working and being on worship team and living this out, but how am I gonna rob my kids of that truth? You know, I need to be their leader first. And so it's been a blessing to be able to sit down with them and have these conversations. My son weeps when we talk about race. Sometimes he gets frustrated and he'll have to go and take a minute in his room because it's almost like that inner conflict. He's so sad that this is how it is. And I don't like the immigration, what's going on with immigration right now, and seeing these kids and knowing these kids are being separated from their families. His dad actually got deported last year, and it was just crazy emotional for him. But that reality sank in, where it was like, oh shoot, this affects our family so close to home. And so I appreciate my husband because he's so receptive, being white, to coaching our kids through that, and he's always a good team player. When even he doesn't have the answers, he's like, okay, yeah, no matter what, he wants the conversation to keep going. And so, it's, gosh, the kids.
And so you listen to like the idea of Martin Luther King, the content of the character, versus the color of your skin. Isn't that everything wants to push to polarize either or, and really it's both and. It's staying in the place of tension, and again, you guys in a sense can help us with that because you live in the tension.
Yeah.
Now, within yourself as well as in your core family, but that idea of you're just you, it doesn't matter, and yet be proud of your heritage, be proud of the diversity that you have, be proud of. But don't take too much pride in it, But then don't, you feel
'cause
the
they're
push
kids.
to either go to this extreme or this extreme.
They get same thing. They get, because they're not developed, and the psychology and the frontal cortex, because they're not developed enough to know that, it's really important because they'll start segueing, like my son, to being a little bit more aggressive towards white people, like, in his thought processes. And so the foundation of God is so important, and where he fits into all of this, because that's where we need to stay centered. For me and my family, that's where I'm like, okay, where is God in that? And who are you in him? What your identity does not come from you being able to play sports or being a Chicano or however, you know what I mean? What if this happened? Who would you be, and would you be okay? Like, they've got to learn. I don't know. To me, it's so important for them to know who they are in Christ before they know who they are culturally.
Yeah, well, if it's hard for them to find balance, imagine, because we're just finding balance. We're just learning that,
Yeah,
to find that balance.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can hear your longing may we give the good gift to the next generation of not having, of being more welcoming and more, open to different experiences without letting go of what holds us together, our common humanity, and even, what does it mean to be an American, that part of it as well. Yeah.
Learning to love first.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing how my little family is going to come together, because I didn't have, even though I grew up in the home with my grandpa who was white, he, like my grandma said, he really came into her culture and did things her way, our way, the Mexican-American way. And so there wasn't really a true strong white cultural presence in the household. So with my husband, I think he will bring that and be a great example of how to be accepting of the other culture, but also it's okay to be part of this his own too, because he's definitely brought that. His grandmother was first generation Irish. She was born on the ship over and landed in New York. So that's a big
Yeah.
part that's going to be part of my daughter, that I want her to know, like, hey, you're not only black and Mexican and white, you're Irish. Like, that's cool. I'm not Irish. I don't get to say that. But you're going to say that. And so I want you to know about that. And I want you to ask your grandma those stories and ask that side of their family, what are you German? Are you Welsh? Well, you're not just white, you're something.
Yeah.
So what is that? And I want her to know all of those things and appreciate each and every little thing that she is, not have to pick and choose like we had to.
And I like what you said, Victoria, that you're not just white, you're something. You know, you're Scandinavian, you're Dutch, you're something. So you do have culture. There is culture there.
Yeah.
That's important.
And it's so cool how we get to, like you said, we get bred into this way of life, but how God allows us the gift of breaking the cycle. Breaking the cycle for your daughter and for my kids, growing up in this new generation after us. It doesn't have to continue. The cycle doesn't have to continue.
Absolutely.
Well, Pastor Keith's standing up here, which means we have another question, which is great.
This question is for you, Shane.
Oh, boy.
So, Shane, this has been our third conversation about racism. So, what's the biggest thing that you have learned from talking to these people from different cultures and backgrounds?
Wow.
Good question.
Really
That kind of, where are we at the few minutes left? I don't know if that kind of leads me into the bit of the close because just his comments on that. And so biggest lesson I've learned is what we're modeling here, which is really inviting people in, welcoming people who are different, understanding that, there's a kind of like, I grew up with an idea of what an American meant, and that's my version of it. And so then you have your version of what it meant to be an American. You have your version, and we're better together than we are alone. So I think that's the biggest thing that I hope that I'm learning, is continuing to learn, because that's been the biggest part of me engaging in these conversations, are the friends that I have, the faces I have along the way of people that I opened up. They opened up their world into me, who are different, and I opened up to them, and we discover we're better together. So, these conversations continue that. Do you have another question?
Yeah, this question is for everyone. What are your feelings when you see all of the racial unrest in America?
All of them?
I know. I
Sad,
get really
angry,
sad.
disappointed.
Yeah, that's very sad.
I feel like it's hard because for me, I'm like, how do you keep it respectful? Because I want to just say, the passionate person that I am, I have so much to say. But I've also got to be receptive and respectful. And like I've learned in counseling to use that passion appropriately. And so it gets me really upset, frankly. It just makes me really upset and angry, and I have lots of tears, and I feel like just that flooded feeling about everything going on right now in the racial tension.
I get really sad, but I am very grateful for conversations like this that we are doing, because we get to help educate people, but also we get to learn from each other, because I can be very judgmental. I have to work on that. So I don't want to just, in my anger, when I see like everything going on in the news, I just want to just judge the situation of racism. But that wouldn't be fair, because it's more sad than anything.
I'm very quiet about my opinions on especially the bigger issues because I'm very non-confrontational. I know if I put my opinion out there, that's now putting it out for somebody else to judge and to make comments on when that's not why I'm putting my opinion out in the first place. So I've been very quiet, especially on social media, about things, but that doesn't mean I don't have opinions. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the memes with how God made me, and so he put a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Well, for me, it's the empathy jar. He just like dumped it out. So as soon as I see those things, the videos and the posts about how people are treating other people based off of their color, that just instant tears for me because it hurts. I feel like it's happening to me. I feel like it's happening to my family, to somebody I don't even know, but I feel it and it hurts. It hurts so bad. And you just want to take it away because I'm also a fixer. I just want to take it all away, but there's only one me and there's a whole world. And so, like my grandma said, I think the best thing we can do is just start these conversations and talk about it and figure out ways to help the situation because it just hurts.
I'd say back to that question of what have I learned is that this is a human problem. It's not a white problem. It's not a black problem. It's not a Hispanic problem. It's a human problem. And it's not even a racist problem. I mean, this is the United States. It's a lot of race. But then last week, we learned from Pastor Francis about casteism in India. And we learned from Ifoma and Chikozi, the tribalism in Africa. And, it's bigger than our American conversation about racism. That doesn't diminish it. It's just, may we remember first that this is a human issue. Yes. And I would even go further, it's a sin issue.
Yes.
That we want to have power over others, and we want to make the world. I want to make the world work for me, and I will use race. I will use economic. I will use the things that I've been given to build my own kingdom. Oftentimes at the cost of you or the cost of others, and that's the sin nature in me.
The moral, like James said, the moral. If there's no repentance, it's a heart problem. Yeah. It's not about our color or interracial marriages or any other thing, but like you said, that context that we grow up, that it's our world. We are so selfish individuals, and that's the fallen world we live in.
Great questions, great conversation. About used up our time here, and I just want to close with a passage, actually, Jesse, you gave me today that it's one that I'm sure I've read 100 times, but you gave it to me. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that was there. But Psalm 82, I invite you to look this up, if maybe now, maybe later. Psalm 82, in particular, verses 3-5, it says, give justice to the poor and the orphan, uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute, rescue the poor and helpless, deliver them from the grasp of evil people. But these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. They wander about in darkness while the world is shaken to the core. And this is, the psalmist is talking about under God's heavens, under the freedom that he's given us as human beings. This is the call. This is how we act like God, because this is what God does to us. And that's that verse, though, that got my attention was, these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. They wander about in darkness while the whole world is shaken to the core. And if there's one aspect of all this that I would love for especially in the context of Hillsborough, Washington County, most of Sunrise have my color skin. And we are getting the feedback from those that don't, that are minorities in our culture, that we feel oppressed. And at first, my reaction to that is viscerally no. And yet, I look at this and I just come to terms with the fact that dominant cultures dominate. So if you're in the majority of culture, you don't even see it. You're ignorant to it about how that feels oppressive to somebody who comes from a different background. And can we just own that? It's not even a white thing. It just happens that this is the context we live in. This is the context I live in. So it's now on me. Instead of asking you to come to me and help me understand, no, it's on me because I'm the one in the privileged position to come to you and say, help me understand your story. So if you're listening today and you look like me, then that's really on us. Of course, if you're in a different part of the city or a different part of the country and you're in the majority there, then that's now you. And so the gospel calls us, the Bible calls us, Jesus calls us, always to use whatever privilege we have, whether it's economic or racial or spiritual or maturity or age or whatever it is. Use what you've been given for the benefit of others. Use it to serve, use it to love. And so That's what I would love for us as a church, as we engage the world around us, as we engage each other. And we're using up the rest of our time here, and so I just want to ask Jesse, would you pray for us as we close?
Yeah, sure. Lord, I just want to invite your Holy Spirit into the world today, Lord, just as you did with Egypt so many years ago, Lord. I ask that your Holy Spirit just rush through each town and knock on each door and kind of just wipe out the ignorance and the oppression that's going on, Lord. These are your people. I ask that you deliver them, white, black, Mexican, Asian, anybody oppressed, Lord. I know that this breaks your heart, Lord, because these are your children, these are your people. And Lord, I just ask that you would instill empathy and compassion in each one of us, instill and convict our hearts, Lord. Convict us in all the areas that we need to be seeing things differently. I invite you to mold us and make us to continue to provide a light to our feet, that we could walk through these valleys together as in community, how you originally formatted us to live, not in isolation. And Lord, I just know that you've got this all under control. You're such a sovereign God, and you're so good, Lord. And I know you're up there, and we can't see what's in front of us, Lord, but you know. And I trust you, and I pray to soften the hearts of anyone else who may be struggling with that. So, Lord, break our hearts for what breaks yours, Lord, and let us love first. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining in the conversation. Thank you for joining us for the conversation this evening. This is the last formal one we're having on Facebook Live, but that doesn't mean the conversation ends. Let's make sure this conversation goes on. Good night to you.